Welcome to the first episode of What's Trending with myself, Adrien, and Nolan. We're going to be making these weekly or as often as possible, going over some interesting ideas, both on the social arbitrage side, but also in the general market, and giving our opinions on different trends and things going on that are impacting the companies that you are interested in. But we will also try to throw in some companies that we think would expand your horizon in terms of investing and what you might invest in the future. So I'm super excited to start making these weekly and to see how they go. So Nolan, you could start by introducing yourself.
Awesome. Adrien, first, thank you for having me. Thanks for reaching out. I know we've connected a few times over, I think, a couple of years now in terms of when Ticker Trends was in its infancy. Again, I know I was interviewed there on Dumb Money, and I'm still a very active member of that community, but you've built a really awesome community yourself, and a really awesome, valuable resource in your Substack. So I don't want to blow too much smoke your way, but I think you deserve it. You've done a really great job. It's kept me inspired. So even though I have a full-time job, I work for Chewy. I'm doing Google Ads for Chewy. So I won't comment on Chewy here, but before that, I was 10 years at an agency where I was starting doing Google shopping and ads specifically for e-commerce sites. And again, so I'm using Google Trends all the time for my job, and I've applied that in ways where it's given me, where I feel like at certain points I do have an edge on the market in certain areas. I have a kind of a window behind the curtain in terms of trying to find a story behind, or trying to find some data that could support if a narrative of growth is intact. A lot of what I focused on is more longer term, kind of multi-year. Ideally, I'm having a position like deck where I can be in it for over a year. But I'm also looking for these inter-quarter opportunities as well. I know that's something you really specialize in. So again, you've come up with a number of companies for us to look at today. Some of them were newer to me. Some of them I have positions in. So excited to dive in here.
Awesome. Yeah. And Nolan has been a great resource and community member even for us as we've been working on Ticker Trends. And a little background of myself. I am one of the team members and the founder of Ticker Trends. And what we've done at Ticker Trends is we have a couple businesses, a couple things that we do. We do a lot of great research through our blog, and we also post it on Twitter. And outside of that, we operate a hedge fund as well as a data business with some cool data visualization tools. But basically, I'm obsessed with the market and looking at various opportunities through the lens of data. But I also tend to have pretty unique opinions on things. I think when you're managing a portfolio, you need to have kind of strong, unique opinions on things. If not, you'll just kind of follow what everyone else in the market thinks. I try to I'm going to try to give as valuable insights as possible, but also more importantly, just different opinions than you'll hear somewhere else. So hopefully that will contribute to your personal decision-making process whenever you're looking at some of these businesses. So we could jump into the first company. Some of the companies, I guess I can give an overview. We'll be going over Tesla, Aritzia, Shark Ninja, CDXC, which is the producer of NAD Plus supplements, as well as Mountain, which is Vail Resorts. So first, let's start off with Tesla, and Nolan can start with that one.
Awesome. Let me share my screen on a few ones I had queued up here for this. I think Tesla is a good one that kind of shows a clear distinction I always try to make when I'm kind of demonstrating how I use Google Trends, and that am I trying to use Google Trends to understand the kind of recent search volume for the company at large, we call it a head term, or am I looking interested in the actual stock itself? So, I mean, Tesla in particular is a company, as we all know, that there's a lot of, in some cases, there's more interest in the stock than there is in buying the cars. So again, like looking at red here, and you can see that including the word Tesla in stock, and I had it before it, including the ticker symbol TSLA, and it was about 2/3 of the volume as the word Tesla. So it's a company that you really want to try to tease that elements out of it. Going back and forth in preparation of this with Adrien, I know you had an interesting perspective. I know in the last week we had the Model Y refresh. You can see the spike in the last 7 days here. So it is interesting. As somebody who, I've got a son, and my wife's expecting in May, so we're gonna have two, and my little Chevy Volt probably is not going to be big enough for that. So I am considering a Model Y myself. So I'm interested in the refresh, but so I watched the videos myself just as a potential consumer. But again, what are we assessing on that? I know you had an interesting part of your thesis around what you think was the main catalyst behind the last 2 months. I think it's hard to deny it, but if you want to hop in there, Adrian, on what you're.
Yes, I think there's been a lot of talk just with everything going on with Tesla in terms of why investors are interested in it. I think there are a lot of forward-looking things with the business that obviously attracts a lot of the retail investor base in terms of things like self-driving vehicles, the humanoid robots, and things to that extent. The one thing that I think is kind of overlooked in the broader discussion of Tesla, at least on like the retail investor base side, is that I think that a lot of Tesla's more recent price action, despite kind of some of the narrative or news that covers Tesla, is that I think a lot of at least the institutional money that has gone into Tesla has been related to Elon's relationship to Trump. So I actually think that, in my opinion, most of this short-term price action in Tesla, not necessarily taking into account any of the forward-looking, like future aspects of Tesla, I think has been related to this deep political integration of Elon Musk in the U.S. Political system. And so in terms of someone potentially holding Tesla as like a shorter term position, potentially speculating on some of these like technology aspects of the business, like humanoid robots or self-driving or even new car launches, I would say that this is something to be careful of, because I think the market will care a lot what happens with Elon Musk and Trump. So if there were to be very strong relationships within the government that continue over the next couple of years, and if the Department of Government Efficiency goes well, and it shows that Elon Musk continues to have a strong relationship with Trump, then it's not as much of a risk. But I would be careful if there were any falling out or kind of disagreement between the two, because I think the market could care more about that probably than people expect. So my general thinking around it was just the importance of Trump and Elon Musk kind of being very close to each other. And I think the market cares about that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective. I think it's one that is kind of hard to deny. And I mean, as you were talking, I tried to bring up some supporting elements, kind of how my mind thinks about things like this in terms of how it relates in terms of Google Trends. But obviously, there's queries that are going to contain both their names. Again, I think this element of is there could potentiality for a falling out. I know the last week and a half or so. I mean, we're here second week of January, almost concluded, but the H-1B1 visa conversation was a pretty big one around the pros and cons of that. Even my understanding of the debates kind of expanded. I'll leave it there, but it's an interesting one. And again, people were calling it the MAGA civil war of sorts, already kind of showing some signs of having to pick the side of the fence. I think Trump did kind of more pick the side of the fence on Elon's there. I think there could be some debate of how that went, but I think Elon's the kind of personality that he's going to have to pick sides. I think maybe a little more often than he ideally want to on these things like that. So it will be interesting. And I think the same way that there was an awesome run up, that is now a risk to be considered. I think even the last day or two, there was some, again, you listen to the soundbite, but something around potentiality of an automated workforce, things like that Trump was saying. So there are certain things you could definitely say that could certainly help things out. But I do think the investor that's trying to hope to see how successful a Model Y relaunch is, which I know it's going to be in China at first, that's going to probably take backseat a bit towards these other things in terms of the short term. So
yes,
cool.
And I think that this, I mean, just as a brief note, adding on to these types of events in the market, I think it's always important whenever someone is trying to speculate on a specific aspect of a business or even data relating to a business, that the thing that they're trying to speculate on is actually what the market cares about the most. I think I'll see this quite often, even with discussion on Twitter, or maybe even sometimes in the Ticker Trends Discord, where people will talk about certain businesses and whatever data point or thesis that they have is not necessarily incorrect. Like maybe that aspect of the business is growing or those things are doing well. But when you look in terms of executing that in the market, that's where a little bit of risk can come in, because you really have to make sure that that's actually what the market cares about a lot too. Because you can get stuck in situations where even if a business is growing or something is doing really well, the market might care about something completely different, and the price can stay disconnected from the actual performance of the business or product that you're looking at for quite a long time. So I think Tesla is like a good example of this.
Yeah, again, I know Chris Camillo, he's a bit of someone we should follow here, as a bit of a guru to follow. But yeah, I mean, understanding whatever outside external risk there is, and I do think there's a bit of again, the amount of benefit that it's been in this relationship could definitely go in the counter pretty quick. If so, again, it's something now that's an extra level of consideration. I think it is. Yeah, and we'll leave it there for that one.
Yes.
Cool.
Cool. So the next one we'll get into is Aritzia. I'll go ahead and share some of the results from Aritzia's recent earnings release. Aritzia was one that's interesting because I think there was a lot of discussion going into this in some of the groups that Nolan and I are in terms of discussing the strength of many of the data points that relate to this business. Aritzia was just killing it in terms of the holiday season, and this was seen all the way back even at Black Friday times, really at the beginning of the holiday season, where Aritzia had an abnormally good Black Friday, and that completely carried over into the holiday season as well. And so when they came out with earnings, the market was quite surprised at how good the performance was. And there was a lot of growth, especially, I believe it was the US digital growth. Let's see here. US digital growth was one of the primary factors that contributed to some of this abnormal performance. So I think Aritzia was a really interesting one, and it was one that within the community there was quite a bit of discussion going into it. Let me see if I can pull up the article here. I guess, Nolan, you could give your perspective on it as well.
Yeah, it's one where, again, I listed a few on my Twitter account around one where I've had FOMO. This is one where I just like to kick myself for being too lazy to get back into interactive brokers. But a number of areas, this was a pretty clear position that was something outside was happening. The lines being talked about on places like TikTok versus just looking Google Trends, it was kind of overflowing. Even just, I'll share my screen in a little bit. The head term of Aritzia alone, which this is like kind of the opposite of the case of Tesla, where nobody really cares about Aritzia and the word stock, or at least very low search volume. It's listed in the Toronto Stock Exchange, wherever it is there in Canada. So it's not a whole lot of search volume for the company itself. So all the search volume is primarily customer based. But yeah, you can hop in here, Adrien, on what you have on the research you guys pulled together.
Yes, I agree. I mean, virtually all of the interest in this brand is customer based, and they had a lot of products that I think were just also kind of right place, right time. This holiday season, and especially winter products, have been doing exceptionally well. And Aritzia had been executing on that very well through their social platforms, especially with one of their very significant products being the Super Puff. They had a lot of kind of campaigns and these marketing things of like making the oversized Super Puff and a lot of clothing that, at least for this holiday season, was kind of exactly on trend for the Gen Z type of consumer. And then this was seen across many different social platforms when you're looking at like TikTok likes, the follower growth on Instagram and other platforms, YouTube search interest for Aritzia. These things were all kind of going parabolic this holiday season. And year over year, the growth was very, very significant across these various channels. So I thought this was a great example of where social arbitrage and looking at the Gen Z movement around Aritzia, the different products that were doing well, the social media traction and growth, combined with a business that had actually already started to see some of that progress in the previous quarters. It was a very good trade for social arb.
Without a doubt, and I'll grab the share on my side for a second. It won't take too long here, but I think it's back up here. So again, this is one where, again, head terms of Aritzia alone, remove the stock, almost have the exact same shape. So it's not really there. And so what I'm always trying to do is take a look at a recent window of time, like the last 90 days, and see some of the rising queries. I mean, generally, even just going through some of the thesis that Adrien was laying out there, that some of that we talked about before, some of it we didn't, but a few things went off. Again, if it's their direct-to-consumer sales going through their website, if it's an e-commerce player, I always look at the word coupon code. So people either search for promo code or coupon code. So you do Aritzia and code, you're going to see it. You can see quite clearly the green this year was bigger than last year. Same thing with e-commerce ones. People are curious on the shipping times. Can you find a good shipping code? So even purple looks like higher this year than last year. I like taking a couple important terms. I know the puffer didn't particularly, but when I looked at this, I think hoodie was particularly big in fall as well from them. So you can see, you just pluck out a couple of these core terms and clearly see they're doing really well. Same thing again with hours. When it's a local location, I like using the word hours. And they were basically across the board, everything was doing well. I know it's not quite as important for females, but Reddit actually is growing in a big way for females as well. And their Reddit, Aritzia plus the word Reddit was seeing really good search volume as well. So there's just a number of things they had going for it. That was pretty obvious that this was something that would be much bigger than last quarter. And then it becomes the question of, is it bigger than the investors or is Wall Street expecting this level of growth? I think that's just the only question there, but that it was going to be bigger was kind of without a doubt what it was showing.
Yes, I agree. I think with especially clothing brands, it's really the, outside of just interest in search or web traffic or those things, really just a massive aspect of it that I continuously see is the ability of these businesses to execute on social media. I think that the ability for something to go viral on TikTok or like these short form platforms and having a significant amount of discussion around it on those platforms. It's something like, for example, with Victoria's Secret that is consistently kind of underappreciated, where with Victoria's Secret being able to gain hundreds of millions, if not billions of views on a specific event or trend on TikTok, and having that compared to maybe YouTube or Google, which is maybe in the hundreds of thousands or millions, the impact of those distribution platforms is really huge. And when you can have businesses execute on those well, it brings a lot of momentum to things like clothing brands quite a bit. So I think it's definitely important, very important to look at for those types of retail businesses. And I guess moving on to the next business, speaking of like very well digitally run businesses, Shark Ninja has been a company that it's essentially an e-commerce first business, although I know they have some level of in-person sales as well. But I think they've done a really good job of kind of taking products that are not, I mean, to some extent they can be unique, but I think a lot of their business is more curation of finding certain products or making small innovations on existing products, launching them under their brand, and creating a brand and a certain name around those products to be able to say, well, if I'm going to go buy a hair, a blow dryer or a toaster or a coffee machine, I would rather buy Shark Ninja's coffee machine than some other company because I know there's a certain minimum level of quality. And then also they typically have some cool feature or extra thing that will kind of hook me in as a consumer. And they tend to mix some of these premium features at a lower price point. So I think that combined with their marketing and their ability to gain traction on social media has been something that's really, really strong. And that's been able to be seen in some of the performance, which Nolan, you can show.
Yeah, again, it's a company I've followed for a while now. The agency I was at, we actually had a sales pitch with them. They're located nearby, so I'm in Boston. Their headquarters are in Framingham, so it's right west of the city here in Boston. So it's a company I've been aware of. I don't have any friends or anyone that works there, but it is one that's an interesting company. And again, they've got a couple different of these core sectors of what they sell. I know for a while they've had some really good success with, I think my first ever Shark Ninja project that I bought was like a blender, a shark blender to make green smoothies. And you can see that's been around for a while in purple here. But you also have some of these more niche ones that actually done really, really well. So like the creamy last couple of years, it makes like ice cream has done really well. You see each year getting a little bigger. And even this spike is earlier than you'd expect it to be. But this is a July spike. And we've already had a spike for the creamy that's been bigger than the July spike. So I mean, even this has got me a little more curious to go a little bit deeper on the creamy there. One thing that I got, my wife asked for Christmas, or we do Christmas and Hanukkah here, was the flex style. So their hair products have also gotten really well. So that's like this thing that helps you curl your hair, and that's been doing, I suppose, a really hot product. It's doing really well. You see it in blue here picking up. So a number of areas that they've got going on. This is only, I'm sure there's a few other ones we can get in there too. But they've really, I guess I voiced over the purple being air fryer, but versus the blender. But anyways, they've done really well. They have a number of lines working for them. I think this is an area too where, again, I'm trying to not only use Google Trends, but I am trying to take the last few earnings reports, drop it in there to get a sense of, can you give me a sense of how big are the different segments of the business? So again, it's a small position for me at present. And as I go deeper to understand the company, but it's kind of how I motivate myself to take a deeper dive, is to actually put some skin in the game there. But it is one that I'm personally interested in right now, with a small kind of entry position. I know one you've been following for a while here, and there's one we've connected on Twitter a bit on this. So yeah, anything else you want to share there, Adrien, on the short term or longer term for the company?
Yes. I think, like, as you mentioned, a lot of the Ninja and home kitchen products are doing exceptionally well. And when you look at the growth, I think things like the Ninja Creamy, I think what's interesting about that is, yes, it's one like viral product that's trending. But a unique thing about that is when you have a company like Shark Ninja that sells all these other products, I think it gives a massive advantage to just have maybe some products. They might even classify it like this internally, but have some products that are kind of created or there to be socially trending or interesting products or more vanity products that people have that are not pure product necessities within people's households. But then they also sell the necessities and things that you do need. So it's an interesting way to kind of grab a consumer's attention, and rather than just selling them on that one creamy product, I think it sticks in people's heads and it gets people to come back to buy those other things that they might need in their household. And so looking at it here, like in terms of web traffic, you can see that excess growth in the Ninja Kitchen website value, which is a bit stronger than Shark Clean. But what I think what's really cool about their business is they kind of expand, not only with driving more interest and traffic to their primary products, but they have a very fast cycle of new product launches. And they launch many products within the same sectors that they're already in. And so going back to that, like brand loyalty and consumer loyalty of people being interested in Shark Ninja, I think it's a really good way to continue to cater to their customers and get them coming back to purchase more and more things. And what's a really interesting data point to me is this search value of Shark Clean and Ninja Kitchen together, where you can see that whenever you combine the volume of these two terms, you can see the abnormal performance this season. And then even looking at it year over year, this company in terms of like search interest is growing at 50% year over year. And these are volumes that are massive for such a big company. So you can really see that their strategy is paying off.
Yeah, very, very impressive as a business execution here. I think the only question is in terms of, again, I think you've got an interesting perspective there, Adrien, that I hadn't considered, of like these products that are intentionally viral to kind of give more credence to the brand and their core. So we have also a Shark vacuum cleaner that was a cheaper option than the Dyson when we moved in here to our apartment. So it's a brand that, as people start feeling like the brand is, when brands have value, people don't need to go to the depths of doing all the research and reading all the reviews. They end up believing in a brand. So if they're seeing that the Creamy is doing well and they've got that in their mind, they're maybe more quickly to pull the trigger on their next blender or their next vacuum purchase. Right. But anyway, it's a pretty going to grow, and it's interesting. Yeah.
I think it's that small thing where in the world of like budget products, there are many no-name brands. And especially when you look on platforms like Amazon, I was just recently looking at, I think anecdotal evidence of these things is super valuable. Like for myself, just recently I was looking at coffee machines on Amazon, and I actually found myself, after a while, I was looking at these no-name brands that are kind of budget options for coffee machines, and I ended up looking up just if Shark Ninja had a coffee machine themselves, because I know that it will match probably the rough pricing of those budget options, but it's a big name, or it's a name brand that I trust more than some random company on Amazon. So I think things like that, or even when I went to a Walmart or Target to look at vacuums, then I also found myself looking if there was a Shark Ninja option, because I don't want to spend the most money on a Dyson, but I also don't want to get one that's going to fall apart. So having that middle brand name, I think it's very strong for them.
Yeah, the niche looks good here. I know you had another interesting company. I don't know, we're going to do the NAD, this one there next. Is that on the docket?
Yes, yes. So NAD is one, which I think is quite interesting. It's quite a small cap business, and much of their recent growth has been a result of this product, which is the NAD Plus and True Niagen brand supplement. This is a supplement where I think there's been this. Sometimes you'll see these trends that connect to a larger theme or sector trend, and one of those things is definitely health and fitness. But I think there's specific aspects of the health and fitness sector that are growing a lot. One of which is this idea of living longer, and specifically Brian Johnson is this influencer online where he talks about how can you maximize your lifespan and slow the speed of aging and things like that. And this is one of those supplements and pure plays on a company that benefits from this, because NAD Plus, as far as I understand, it's a supplement that helps with cognitive function, and it's actually something that in Brian Johnson's recent documentary on Netflix, I believe there's some scenes or something where you can even see the bottle that he has this supplement in his cabinet or something. So it's something where it kind of perfectly falls into these recent trends, and consumers are discovering this medicine for the first time, this supplement for the first time, and it's growing immensely. I think there are many risks with trading something like this, but it's also something where if you have enough of an idea of what's happening with the brand, and how the growth looks inter-quarter, there's going to be far less coverage for something that's this small. 500 million market cap. Many hedge funds cannot invest in this. There's a limited number of retail investors in this as well. So if you really specialize in looking at some of these $500 million companies, just recently with NAD Plus, they had a huge move on earnings. So it can definitely happen again. And so that's why I thought it was an interesting one to look into. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one where your post on Twitter is where I first heard of the company. And so November 21st, it goes, the NAD supplement search volume is very impressive. Definitely going to dive deeper on this. Wish I actually did dive deeper on this one. But yeah, I guess this is another good time for the not financial advice, not financial advisors, little annotation on our conversation here. But it's one where, again, the resources you've created as a means in which to kind of a shorter list to invest and investigate further, because it is one that even I just refreshed it. So again, that's why on mine, when I do this little GOTR for Google Trends, I put the company CDX just for my own purpose to include them, so I can come back here, click on it, and then get an updated view of this thing that I spent a little bit of time in there. But I mean, it's only continued to go up. Yeah, it took a little bit of cool down during people worried about Christmas time, but here we are back to kind of climbing again. We'll see if what happens there. But I mean, NAD supplement, NAD versus, I mean, a number of things are going in the right direction for here. It comes under the surface elements of this. So I need to go deeper myself than I have already. But I think it's a good example of one where there are little diamonds to be found in these smaller companies. And again, do your own elements of position sizing and risk tolerance, but an interesting company with something definitely as a tailwind here for them.
Yes, I think it's a double-edged sword. When you're trading a small cap that's very concentrated, you have the benefit of it being able to follow potentially something very closely, but you also have a lot of risks being smaller companies can be very volatile in terms of management and how and just what happens within the business even outside of the products that they're selling. An example of that is like Lifeway Foods, where they have all these kefir products, but they had some controversy even between the management, and there was a potential acquisition from another company. So you tend to have these weird things that happen within these smaller companies. And then you combine that with pharmaceutical and medicine, and I think it can be even riskier. But I think at the same time, when you find these supplements or for these pharmaceutical companies, the second they have one or two things that do really, really well, it gives them the opportunity to grow a lot. So it's super risky on either side, but I think it's an interesting one to look at.
Cool.
And I think for our last business to look into, Vail and the ski season in general has been very, very interesting. So I guess Nolan can start off with what's been happening there.
I can tee it up a little bit. Like breaking news. I think we're going over this a little bit. It sounds like the ski patrol strike has ended here. So I am a skier. I guess I was a skier before I had a 2.5-year-old, but so I ski up in Vermont quite often. So I'm very familiar with Vail Resorts and the ticker there. But they've been hit. I mean, last year the ski season in New England was terrible. I even looked how bad it was in out west, but I mean it was the worst I think we've had. I mean, I don't remember for when he was absolutes there, but this was a really bad year last year. So a lot of companies have had a harder time there. And obviously Vail is kind of aggregating, gobbling up all these bigger resorts across the U.S. at this point now. But I know the ski patrol strike was really impacting them. You saw some pictures of them giant lines. I know you went a little deeper than I have. I haven't taken any positions either side of this one here, but it is an interesting one to see what this. I guess it's interesting to see what happens the next week after the strike ending. But I don't know if you want to speak to how you've played it or how you've considered playing it or thought through it at least the last 30 days.
Yes, I think what really caught my attention for this is again, I think this is the value of anecdotal experiences. I think there are a lot of very interesting starting points that you'll see online, just from individual experiences being documented on social media. What really caught my attention was seeing these pictures all over Twitter of like these massive lines, massive ski lines to get on the lift. And then there were just hundreds of people complaining about 4+ hour waits to go on the lift and get on the slopes, having all these pictures like the one that I'm showing on screen of these enormous lines. And so that's what hooked my interest into thinking, maybe there's something interesting here. Of course, the strike was something that was likely a large, probably the reason why these lines got this big. But there could potentially be an opportunity here where you had all this coverage of people talking about the strikes, these massive lines. Maybe people were waiting to get into the ski season, or it just generally got more people thinking about skiing. And so I think that there could potentially be some interesting things later on in the season, where there are some terms like ski jackets and winter clothes that are doing very well. So I think there might potentially be a pretty good winter. And maybe that could translate into a good ski season now that the strike is also over, which it just ended today as of making this video. So maybe there could be a turnaround later in the season. And whenever you have a certain situation like this, which is, yes, it's bad for the business that they had a strike and now they're going to have to pay their workers more. So for Vail itself, for the business, it's bad. But it's like a very short-term catalyst, and now that catalyst is kind of over. So if there were to be a strong ski season and if things do turn around a lot from here, then the market will start to reprice, saying, okay, now we know that this strike event risk is over, and there might be they'll focus now more on the actual performance of the ski season rather than this event. So this is kind of the opposite, where it's an unwinding of like this big potential risk event, and now the strike is over, so the market can start caring again about how the actual ski season itself does, and look past some of these risks that it previously cared about a lot.
Yeah, it's again really interesting. So again, my background is I ski at a small mountain up in Vermont. It's called Burke Mountain. It's about 2,000 feet high mountain. So it's much smaller. They literally had a discount, or like if you waited in line more than 10 minutes, you get like half off your next ticket or something like that. Basically, they just never had lines, which was their problem. But I know this in the space, it's actually like, obviously they want to have good conditions. What actually does better is they'd rather snow be in Denver, snow be in the cities nearby. That's what actually gets people to the mountains more than snow in the mountains. So this could be some bit of an element of it got it in front of people's Instagram feeds. They saw their friends that were in line. And now if they find out that it's not as bad as it is now, so there's kind of an element of like a version of snow in the city. If it's something that was newsworthy near them, it could be interesting in the next month ahead. Again, it's a company I've just never really had an alpha on. Also, just as like I like the smaller mountain skier. I was always kind of like against mountain. Doesn't mean shouldn't invest in some companies like that though. So it is an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see how the ski season does for them. I think the curiosity of the event, how much is it always just like of the revenue? It's vacations that have been booked months earlier versus how much is it the people that's the day tripper that's going to go up to go skiing there. So I don't know. It's an interesting one. I could definitely see something being worth following though for the next couple of weeks ahead here.
Right. Like, how much will this actually have a shorter term impact on the season? I think something like this was interesting to me. I mean, I talked about some of those terms, like some of those things relating to clothes and winter clothes performing well. But I think you could also kind of start to see this even in some of the shorter term interest in things like ski pass. I think there are a lot of risks with this, and like you mentioned, just because someone searches ski pass, they might be thinking, maybe they saw the images of the lines on social media, and that's why they're researching this. It doesn't mean they're going to buy it. But I still think that seeing something like this where it's like there's just more attention on skiing because of all this news. And like you said, if that is important, where actually the snow in the city gets people out to ski, this might be one of those events where this is the snow in the city, and it's now making people think about skiing. So now that the strike is over and the season can resume normally, maybe there will be more people going to ski this year than normal.
Yeah, I mean, we can wrap it here just about, but I mean, it's an interesting one. There's been pretty big search volume. So relative, let's see if it's coming up here. Of people searching Epic Pass, which is the main pass for Vail Resorts. Where you buy that, you can go to any of the Vail Resorts. There are certain blackouts and considerations too, which level you buy. But I mean, you can see the Vail strike in yellow was about what is it, almost a quarter or so the height of the other one there. So, but also like these Vail Resorts, which I'm sure people are interested in the stock as well, mixed in. Probably should take some extra element there. But usually it's this kind of downslope that's happening. And again, something's been definitely people are aware of this going on right now. So do with it as you will, but an interesting one to dive into that I'm going to spend a little more time with. So awesome.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good place to end, and we covered a lot of different opportunities and very different things in the market. Yeah, so I'm very excited to continue to do these types of videos and talk about many different businesses, especially through the lens of social arb and data, and how it can apply into the market, to hopefully give our viewers some interesting new opportunities for their portfolio. Of course, we're not suggesting one way or the other to purchase or sell any of these companies, but I think, again, these are just opinions that can be used in their research process and developing their own opinion on if they think there's an opportunity or not. Of course, if you'd like to find us in other places, Nolan and myself, I tend to do much more things through the Ticker Trends name. Nolan has his own social platforms as well. So those are two great resources for you to follow on Twitter and YouTube and other platforms, and get more information from us on what we're doing.
Yeah, looking forward to doing more of these, Adrien. Keep us posted. I'm assuming some feedback will be to make it shorter than this one here, but I'm glad we dove in, finally did the first one. Again, feedback is welcomed. Companies you have in mind, let us know. I'm happy to do similar things, exercise like this on Twitter there, but let us know. Something I like diving into this. I really enjoyed it today, Adrien, and hopefully we'll stick with it here. So thank you.